I wanted to share and talk through the students' presentation of The Great Gatsby using some of the images from the film, just because I think it's a good recap, because that was a really thick, full, heavy chapter. So let's start with the setting just for an overview. It starts at the Buchanan Mansion, but as they meet, they all decide that they're going to go ahead and go to town to compensate. It is the hottest day of the year. Everyone's miserable. Daisy urges everyone to go to the city. On the way into town, Tom and his crew, which includes Jordan and Nick, stop in the Valley of Ashes at Wilson's garage for some gas. They continue their ride into New York, where they stay in a room at the Plaza Hotel. This is a bit interesting because Tom is driving Gatsby's car into town, but then on the way back, they end up switching cars. But Wilson and Myrtle see Tom in Gatsby's car, which is important for some subsequent events. So these images from the film just kind of help us to understand the setting a little bit. So you have Nick, Jordan, Daisy, Gatsby, and then we'll see Tom in a minute. So the plot development, Daisy suggests they all go into town, Jordan, Nick, Gatsby, herself, and Tom. Daisy and Gatsby go into the Buchanan's car, and Tom is driving Gatsby's yellow car, which I guess I already said. Tom realizes here that he's losing control of Daisy. Tom finally explodes. He calls out the affair. This causes stress on Daisy, and it makes her run away. Daisy is being pressured and threatened. If you watch this scene in the film, it is intended to be intense because Tom, the way he treats everything, he manhandles it, he's aggressive, he's severe, and he acts that way toward Daisy, as well as Gatsby. When he feels like he's losing her, he gets intense as well and tries to force her into a confession of love. This causes Daisy to then speed back to her house, back to normalcy, and along the way, Myrtle runs out of the garage to Tom's car, thinking that it is Tom driving the yellow car, but Daisy, not knowing who Myrtle doesn't see her. She's upset. Daisy's driving. They're all drunk, and she hits Myrtle with the car. This is the point where Gatsby starts to lose himself to hopeless dreams and realizes that this is not going to happen the way that he had intended. So in this chapter, Daisy tells Gatsby that she loves him. That's one of the first statements she makes. You know that I love you, but nevertheless, as the chapter progresses, she begins to become loyal to Tom by choosing him instead over Gatsby, because Tom reminds her, well, what about this? What about this? What about when I did these things for you? And they talk about how her voice has money in it. And the thing that cracks Daisy is when Tom starts to speak of how Gatsby got his money through illicit means, which means that it's unstable. It's an unstable state of affluence. Whereas Tom's money and affluence is connected to his character, for better or for worse, and it's more stable. And it's the money ultimately that sways her toward her lifestyle with Tom. Gatsby continues to be devoted to Daisy. He fires all the servants for her privacy. He took the blame of Myrtle's death, even though Daisy was the one driving the car. We didn't read that scene together, but if you read the chapter, you'll notice that that's the case. He waited outside of her house all night to make sure that she was safe and that Tom didn't do anything to hurt her. And then he also showed his selfishness by forcing her to tell Tom that she never loved him, but Gatsby himself. And then he lost his temper because Daisy said that she did love Tom. Tom is and ever will be insulting. He's selfish. He's full of doubt. He wants Daisy to stay with him, but only so that he can have her when he's done with his affairs. He has someone to come home to. And at the same time, he wept a bit when he saw Myrtle dead. They're both full of money. It means that every action is done without thinking because they take for granted that they can just do what they like because they can afford to. George Wilson seems like he really cares for his wife. his true inner self was shown when he was violent to her because he wanted to protect what they have. And again, a very unhealthy, unstable, abusive relationship. But of all of the genuine relationships here, Gatsby is in love with a dream. Daisy is in love with money. Tom is in love with an object. And George is in love with his wife. Conflict, obviously. Tom realizes Daisy and Gatsby have a thing. Tom, Daisy, Nick, Jordan, and Gatsby are all at the Buchanan's house for lunch on a hot day. Their eyes meet. They stare together at each other, alone in space, and this gaze is the turning point in Tom and Daisy's relationship, because Tom sees that his wife does have intimate feelings for Gatsby, and she doesn't for him. She has feelings for his money. She loves his money. She loves what it provides in their relationship, but not him. And then we see that Tom is astounded. His hypocrisy is clear at this point in the novel. He doesn't care who knows about his affairs. And yet when he finds out about Daisy and Gatsby, he begins to act like a victim. And he still admits that there's nothing wrong that he sees with his actions. George and Myrtle Wilson are moving west. And this represents Tom's inner conflict. His mistress, Myrtle, or his wife, Daisy, both are slipping away from him, and he chooses to pursue Daisy. Tom discovers George and Myrtle are moving because George found out that she was cheating on him. He doesn't know that it's Tom. Tom's secure life is falling apart around him, and Nick realizes that Tom and George are in the same position. Both men's wives are cheating on their husbands, and vice versa. The husbands are cheating on their wives. Well, not George. So there's that scene. Beat me, throw me down, and beat me, you dirty little coward, says Myrtle Wilson. Daisy drives Gatsby's car back from New York after the confrontation between Tom and Daisy. Myrtle sees the yellow car and believes it is Tom driving when she rushes into the street and she's struck. Daisy drives home despite the fact that she just ran over someone. Tom is distraught at Myrtle's death, and he assumes that Gatsby had done it, and Gatsby is being blamed, but he doesn't say that Daisy did it. We find out that Daisy and Tom act like nothing ever happened. Her love for Gatsby and Tom's sadness over Myrtle is forgotten. So a theme is how the American dream plays out. One from the perspective of a person who has everything, and one from the perspective of a more traditional understanding of the term. Gatsby and Tom have everything they need, such as throwing extravagant parties. They still realize that something is missing. Their dream is not complete. Their greed is taking over. It's why Tom continues to have an obvious affair, and why Gatsby obviously makes desirable advances toward Daisy, while Nick has the more traditional and appropriate American dream. So it's that concept, which you guys are writing for your essay, the American dream at all costs. And it assumes the exploitation of others in order to accomplish what it is that they hope for. Another theme is money. We see the three classes of money coming together in sort of a weird love economic triangle with Tom and Myrtle and Wilson. Tom thinks he can keep Daisy forever despite her true feelings, and Myrtle is staying despite her plan of she thinks she can stay despite her husband's plan to move. Money will continue to make them think that they can buy their way out of problems. Gatsby is ready to prove how secure his life will be since he is now filthy rich. And then finally, we see George and Myrtle, who are barely making ends meet, and they're suffering in the depressing living conditions in the Valley of Ashes. That Tom was her last-ditch effort to escape from her horrible world. And then as the chapter ends, the three economic branches battle against each other. The poor end up losing, and then the rich continue to battle it out. And then again, we'll see in subsequent chapters that even though they continue to battle it out, old money will win. So the cars are symbolic. Tom sends Daisy with Gatsby in his blue car because he trusts that Daisy won't betray him, considering they've been married for years. And Myrtle saw Tom driving Gatsby's yellow car. It's important that they switched vehicles because that led to Myrtle running toward what she thought to be Tom's car, and overall it resulted in her death. A symbol stands for something else. So Gatsby has to prove his worth by having this big car that's showy and flamboyant, whereas Tom has sort of a small, like, sports car, which symbolizes who he is as a person. He's athletic, he's fast, he doesn't need to prove who he is or what his worth is. So here are some more symbols. We didn't read together, but if you read it individually, it'll talk about the green light. The green light is at the end of Daisy's dock, and it represents Gatsby's dream to have a relationship with her. And there are similarities between this chapter and the beginning of the story when Gatsby's looking out across the water at the green light and he's longing for Daisy. It symbolizes that his dream has been crushed, and it foreshadows that Daisy and Gatsby will never be together. It was also said the car which hit Myrtle was supposedly green light, which ties in with that previous symbol. The Valley of Ashes is the poverty and the hopelessness that they all live in. It's made up of the lower classes who want to leave, but they can't. Myrtle dies trying to escape the Valley of Ashes. Wilson kind of loses his mind trying to escape the Valley of Ashes. It illustrates how the American dream is impossible. It's impossible. Nobody wins in this game. So the only person who wins is Tom and Daisy, but even they don't fully because they're stuck in a loveless marriage. But they're bound together because of the money that they have that they need to preserve their relationship. This confrontation between Tom and George shows how the rich look down on the poor because of the difference in their social status, and that's a pretty obvious point, but nevertheless. A couple of key quotes here. One that I referenced in the other videos is that Daisy's voice is said to be full of money. It's one of her most defining features, indicating her elite social status, wealth, carelessness, power, beauty, and materialism. She uses her voice to manipulate, to control, to try to gain power over people. He quickly replies to Nick with this quote as if he has contempt for this aspect of her voice, that he has contemplated this aspect of her voice before, but just kind of the contempt that he has for it. He once longed for a wealthy lifestyle in order to please Daisy, and it just shows that her old money is her way of life. It's a part of her. It's a part of her language. It's a part of the way that she speaks. And one can argue whether Gatsby loves Daisy for who she is as a person, or if he's just infatuated with the idea of her and her inherited social class, something that he will never be able to have. And it's kind of more of a complex point. Another important quote, "She never loved you. Do you hear? She only married you because I was poor and she was tired of waiting for me. It was a terrible mistake, but in her heart, she never loved anyone but me." Gatsby planned for Daisy to tell Tom about their affair and how Daisy was going to leave Tom, but Daisy can't say that. She can't say she never loved Tom because it would be a lie. She loves Gatsby, but she also loves Tom, and this is important for Gatsby because he realizes that it's less about love for Daisy and it's more about the monetary benefit. And finally, I left him standing alone in the moonlight, watching over nothing. And after the incident of Myrtle's death, Gatsby quietly stood on the lawn of Daisy's house looking to see if she was safe. Nick, seeing this, said, "Watching over nothing?" Because he knows that for what Gatsby has been chasing might have been real to him, but in reality, it was never going to happen. And so we have that drama play out. And now what's the significance? Why are we reading this? Is it just like a weird 1920s love triangle? The answer is yes. On one level, it is just a story. But you have to remember also this is partly autobiographical for Fitzgerald, and it is not fully irrelevant even in our era, that people use one another to get what they want. They abuse money and privilege and materialism because it's never satisfying, and the pursuit of it is wrought with oftentimes abuse and scandal and exploitation of others, even on a small level. People exploit their families? People exploit their own health and well-being by trying to get money and status and a place of satisfaction. Um, it's a game that doesn't have any